gonna do this. Can I adjust this, Dave? Is that cool? Hi, everyone. I'm gonna ask you to hold for applause until we get to some yummy sponsors. My name is Katie Hartmann. I am your happy and proud festival producer. Welcome to the 21st annual Cincinnati Fringe Festival. Is there anyone here who is seeing their very first Cincy Fringe show?
This is our first time here.
Welcome. Well, not only are you at the Cincy Fringe Festival, but you are also at the No Theater, which is Cincinnati's theatrical playground. We have a main stage season all year round, as well as underground programming in our cabaret space downstairs. We would love to see you come back another time. We still have one more full night of shows, as well as encore performances on Saturday. So I just want to encourage everyone to take full advantage of the rest of the festival, which is 2 weeks long. And we're at the very end, and it's been a really good one. I just want to thank everybody. If you could take this moment to take out your cell phones and put them on silent. And while you're doing that, I'm going to thank our season sponsors: ArtsWave, the Ohio Arts Council, David C. Harriman, the Greater Cincinnati Foundation, Jeffrey Hungerford, Joshua Wallace, and the Carol Ann and Ralph V. Hale Jr. Foundation. And right here in the No Theater, our venue sponsor is Mr. Jeffrey Hungerford. So, for those of you who are new to Fringe, so the reason why we call it Cincinnati Summer Theater Party is not just because we have theater all night. We have a party every single night, and it's a different party every single night. At 10 p.m., we gather in the No Theater Underground, which during the Fringe we lovingly call the Papa Fringe HQ, sponsored by Joe Mock of Cutler Real Estate. Woo. For Fringe After Hours, we start every night with an episode of the Channel Fringe hard-hitting action news update, and then it's time tonight for some late night improv, and that is all going to happen on the stage up here with Kevin Bauer. It's the Kevin Bauer Power Hour. Get ready to yes and with Whose Line Is It Anyway style games performed by the region's funniest. Audience pick of the Fringe ballots are available at all of the box offices. You're going to see a silver and gold box with a little slot in the top of it. We encourage everyone to vote for their favorite primary lineup show, and we'll be awarding those accolades to Audience Pick of the Fringe as well as other categories on Saturday after encores. So please come celebrate a wrap-up of another awesome festival with us on Saturday night. Let's see, and finally, it is your support of this festival that makes the work of this festival and these artists possible. This is a 2-week-long celebration of local, national, and international independent theater artists. This is the very vanguard of what is going on in the zeitgeist of today's independent theater makers. It's true, it's very true. This is cutting edge. It's as cutting edge as it gets. This is a festival of new work. You're never going to see repeats. And that's why it is so special and why it's so important that we support it. And the best way that you can support, not only by sitting here and being present with the artists, is afterwards going out into the community, talking to people face to face, your family, your friends, your neighbors, and telling them what a great time you had at Cincinnati's Summer Theater Party. And now, without further ado, it is my absolute pleasure to invite you to enjoy the 11th? 13th. The 13th annual, born right here at the Cincinnati Fringe Festival, True Theater's production of True Fringe out of Cincinnati, Ohio.
Preston Bell Charles III. Good evening, everybody. Welcome to True Theater. My name is David Levy. I am a founder and board member of True Theater. We are now in our 14th season, as Katie mentioned. Thank you. Of producing events not that dissimilar to this one down at Memorial Hall, but of course we got our start right downstairs. And since our start, we've been invited to bring an evening such as this to the Fringe Festival every year. We are so honored and appreciative to the artists and the festival for hosting us. The thing that makes this show different than our main stage shows is that we ask artists from other areas within the same festival to share their true personal stories at the same festival. It's something to do, every show we have has a theme, but this theme is always the same. It has something to do with the artist's journey as an artist. Now, one of the things that makes this year different than all the other True Fringe episodes we've had in the past is this one is being ASL Interpreted. Thanks to the generosity of Cincinnati State and their interpretation program, their ASL interpretation program. I'm getting a nod. We have tonight with us the chair of that program, Dawn Caudill. And it only really just occurred to me today, because I know some of her backstory, that we are all being interpreted by her tonight. The same person who has interpreted the likes of Lily Tomlin, Robin Williams, President Obama, and Supreme Court Justice Ruth Bader Ginsburg. And tonight she's interpreting us, and so we're all very honored, and thank you so much. Seriously. I'm reading my things tonight, so... Oh, you may have seen some artists around the Fringe this year that have also taken a turn on this stage in the past. For example, the creator and star of Mounting Washington, Penny Sterling. The writer and co-star of No Passengers, Mac Rogers. One half of the one-man show by two, Seaman, Amika Hunter. Creator and star of Absurda Through the Grapevine, Paul Strickland. French, thank you for applauding after each one. I didn't anticipate this. I'll go slower. Fringe tech guru, Doug Borntrager. Fringe producer, Katie Hartmann. Outgoing producing artistic director of the No Theater and co-anchor of the Channel Fringe hard-hitting action news update, Andrew Hungerford. Incoming producing artistic director of the No Theater and director of I'm Finally Going to Ask Elizabeth Hawkins to the Homecoming Dance, and Nothing Is Going to Stop Me, Not Even the Ghost of My Dead Grandmother Who Watches Me Masturbate, Bridget Leak. And as it's written in the program, Fringe founder obligatory sponsor, Jeff Cerrone. And if you add people who are in the festival that have been on our main stage, the number of people jumps astoundingly. So it's such a great place and such a great time for us to meet the artists that are coming through town or that live here in town. And anyway, we just enjoy it so much. You don't have to be an artist, by the way, to share your story at True Theater's main stage shows. In fact, our July show, where the theme is scams, Scams is coming up, and just next week we are having an open mic style pitch night at Big Ash Brewery where people who have a story they would like us to consider for that show can come and share it. That event is free to come see, even if you just want to watch it, and of course it's free to come pitch, but if you'd like to pitch, the slots are first come, first serve, so go to our website at truetheater.org and just there's a form there to submit your story and let us know that you'll be coming to the pitch night. We can't wait to see you there. Just remember that, like many of you spell theater, we spell theater the fancy way, ending in an R-E, truetheater.org. Okay, so I think that's everything I had to say on that paragraph. And now, we always say at True Theater that everyone has a story to tell, and the only difference between strangers and friends is the sharing of that story. And tonight, if you haven't already made friends with these 4 artists, you're going to make 4 new friends. Our first storyteller tonight is a counselor by day and a theater aficionado by night. You may have known him for a while from the theater blog, which he has maintained since 2010, The Sappy Critic, or you may be lucky enough to have been a part of the sold-out audience of the Fringe development piece that he wrote, Webcam, just this past Tuesday. Please give it up for Kirk Sheppard.
I think I first fell in love with storytelling in 1988 when I watched Randy Savage, the Macho Man, being triple teamed by the Honky Tonk Man and the Hart Foundation on Saturday night's main event. His manager, Miss Elizabeth, had gone to the locker room to find Hulk Hogan and beg him to come and make the save. She drug Hogan to the ring. He did get in the ring, and together, the 2 good guys, Randy Savage and Hulk Hogan, fought off the 3 bad guys, bumping into each other, spinning around, and in one of the most anticipated moments of my childhood, the mega powers shook hands and joined forces. That 18-month-long storyline captivated me week to week until all the way at the end, WrestleMania 5, those 2 good guys, now enemies, Randy Savage, bad, Hulk Hogan, good, wrestled at WrestleMania, and in the main event, Hulk Hogan won back the WWF title, cementing for me one of my core beliefs that good always triumphs over bad. I fell in love with professional wrestling the moment I saw it. The spectacle, the pageantry, the athleticism. It was the only sport I cared about. Roddy Piper, Jake the Snake Roberts, the Ultimate Warrior, these were the heroes of my youth and the characters foundational to my development of the love of story. That love continued into college, and I, at that point, realized that maybe things weren't quite what I'd seemed, and maybe it was more about story than it was competition, but I still loved it. And I found a group of online fans like me who also loved it and would discuss all the backstage gossip and the potential things that could happen, and we all tried to uncover the once very closely guarded secrets of the pro wrestling business. One of the first people to ever really reveal those secrets nationally was a man named Les Thatcher. He had a wrestling school here in Cincinnati. He'd been a wrestler in the 60s and 70s and had been featured on an MTV documentary called True Life, I'm a Pro Wrestler. He also had a radio show every week that I listened to religiously. And he was about to promote a big wrestling memorial show to honor a wrestler who'd passed away at Norwood Middle School, and I had to have tickets. So I called and got front row seats for me and my friends. And during that show, I'd never sat that close, and I fell in love even more, learning how did they talk to each other and not us find out and know? When the ring broke, how did they fix it? What was the ring made out of? But it wasn't until wrestler Tarek the Great jumped off the top rope onto his opponent who was standing in front of me, and they both quite literally landed in my lap, that I was absolutely hooked. I started to go to the weekly events that they promoted around town and started sending in recaps to online wrestling gossip websites, and actually met friends with people who also did the same, and together we created an unofficial website to cover the company. They liked it so much they asked us to come do their official website, and that's how I started behind the scenes in pro wrestling. About a year later, I switched teams. I went to another promotion of the Northern Wrestling Federation, and there I was doing their hotline, I was developing their website, I was doing video editing, all kinds of behind the scenes things, until one day they needed somebody to go out to the ring and make an announcement about a match. They picked me. I went out and did that lots of times. I went out, broke up fights between wrestlers to keep the action from spilling out into the crowd. Eventually, I was a guest referee and once in a while, sometimes even a guest wrestler when the storyline called for it. Finally, I convinced them to let me turn heel. That's the bad guy. That's the fun role. The bad guy, the heel, is the one who adds flavor to the show. He cheats behind the referee's back. He causes havoc, insults the crowd, and has the most fun. I was a manager, so I was outside the ring, causing all kinds of havoc and chaos at all times. And I wore a scarf, no matter what time of year it was. I promise, just because I was cold, not because I wanted to choke the guy. I also carried a baseball bat because I managed a wrestler who happened to be a baseball player character, and I promise you I never used that in any appropriate way. 2015, we heard we were getting a show at Bogart's, the legendary concert venue here in town. Huge opportunity for us. And I was managing a wrestler named Samson at the time. Big African-American brute who'd made a name for himself in Puerto Rico, and he was wrestling here for us. And his opponent that night was going to be a wrestler named the Monster Abyss. Abyss was a nationally known superstar. He was on Spike TV every week on Total Nonstop Action Wrestling, and he'd started here too. Abyss was known for his use of weapons in a Monsters Ball match. That was what it was called. That meant anything goes, no holds barred, rules are out the window. You want to cheat, you want to choke, you want to kick, you want to fight in the crowd, great. You want to use weapons? Absolutely, please do. And he was known for his use of hardcore weapons like thumbtacks and barbed wire, broken glass, stuff that people really wanted to see. I was a little nervous about all that. Match starts, things are going well. Like they were supposed to go, but maybe not so well if you were me, the manager, right? He was beating up Samson, so I had to get involved, distract the referee, choke, kick, whatever it took. Abyss kept staying on top. Finally, we turned the tides, and Samson knocked him out of the ring. And while he was out there, Abyss reached under the ring and found a bag filled with 2,000 thumbtacks that he scattered all over the mat in the corner. But because we're good storytellers, we just let those sit there for a while. They kept fighting. Eventually, at one point, Samson knocked Abyss into a plywood board that had barbed wire on it. 1, 2, not enough. He kicked out. Match continues. Abyss was back on top, and I'd had enough. I got into the ring with that baseball bat. I stood behind him. I snuck up behind him, and at the last second, he turned around. He grabbed me by the throat. He picked me up, and he put me on my back right into those thumbtacks. Very real and very sharp. I rolled around on those tacks because the people had gone crazy, and I wanted to give them their money's worth. Abyss hits his finishing move on Samson. 1, 2, 3. The match ends. We lost. I was ecstatic. We did exactly what we were supposed to do. We told a compelling story that made the people happy. Now, I'm not stupid. I have 2 master's degrees, so I had prepared well. I had 4 layers up top. The thumbtacks really didn't hurt until I got to the back and sat on a metal folding chair and realized there was some in my pants. You know, I was not super comfortable with the hardcore stuff, but I understood why we did it because it made sense within the story. And now when I go back and help new wrestlers who are coming up the ranks, even though I'm retired, I always ask them whenever they're talking about a move they're going to do, what's the story you're trying to tell? That storytelling development has helped me learn about theater. And through my work at the Sappy Critic, where I've watched so many shows, I've learned a few things. Enough things that I was able to write a play called Webcam, and hopefully you saw it Tuesday. The artists couldn't because it was sold out. Very proud of that. And so I hope to continue telling more stories, just like the ones I used to tell in the ring. I'm in the Northern Wrestling Federation Hall of Fame. I'm very proud of that for my contributions to story. And now I hope I continue to do the same thing. Tell compelling stories that are beautiful, sometimes violent, always engaging. This time, though, with just a little less pain.
Keep it going for Kirk Sheppard! I did get to see Webcam, Kirk. I loved it, and I can't wait to see what happens to it next. And congratulations to you for getting that launched here at the Cincinnati Fringe Festival. Awesome. Listen, our second storyteller tonight wants you to know that her story touches on themes of domestic violence, mental health issues, and possibly suicidal ideation. She's a lifelong goth and horror movie fan, a fact that will turn into a minor theme this evening. And this year marks her 10th consecutive Cincinnati Fringe appearance, which is a streak that many people who are not associated with a single production company she may hold the record, is what I'm saying. It's pretty wild. Congratulations on that. I first saw her on stage in 2013 speaking Klingon in a Klingon Christmas carol. But she's been walking the boards a lot longer than that. Fringe enthusiasts may remember her from last year's festival as half of the two-hander Gentrification the Musical. But you will certainly never forget her if you saw her chilling portrayal of the title role in this year's Bloody Mary. It's this year's Fringe Guide cover model, Aiden Sims.
Wow, how do I live up to that introduction? That was incredible. And hello, yes, I am your 2024 Fringe cover model, which is very, very strange to me. And you might think that it's a tale of destiny, of glamour, of glitz, and the cutest flying guinea pigs you've ever seen. But actually, it all started with cats. You made us cow, and it's definitely not that movie. It's not what I'm talking about. But the musical that was the longest running musical on Broadway for eons, that my mom took me to when I was about 5 years old, and I apparently turned to her and said, "Hey, Mommy, I want to do that." And my mother, being a first-time mother, did not know all of the ins and outs of being a parent to a theater kid. But she did have the perspicacity to, yes, I like words, to enroll me in Shield Primary School for Arts Enrichment. Yes. And at the time, it was known as the Little SCPA. And for those of you who are not natives to Cincinnati and do not introduce yourself, including your high school, I wait. SCPA is the School for Creative and Performing Arts. It is a magnet public high school here in Cincinnati, and that and the Little SCPA were where I learned the art of escapism. But also performing arts and theatrical arts, all of that. But escaping for what, you ask? Well, here's where things get a little bit more somber. I am the product of a very, very broken home. My parents couldn't decide on how to raise 3 kids or how to manage their unprocessed trauma. So I ended up with these things called ACEs, or Adverse Childhood Experiences. And I score 7 out of 10, so I'm doing really well. Not really. Because of this, I ended up picking up some additional alphabet, like letters of the alphabet. Like I'm LGBTQIA, but I also have BPD, CPTSD, a big D. I mean depression. Sorry. Yeah, and a whole lot of A. Anxiety, that one, that's the one I meant. So yeah, that's a perfect way to get through your formative years and enter your adulthood. So I try to be a performing artist, and I don't know if you know this, but there's not a whole lot of security in that. And it's a lot harder when you don't have like the self-esteem or the financial resources to like get headshots consistently, or to travel to auditions, or to just show up, or to have like family members who say that, yeah, you can do it, when your brain is telling you, no, you definitely can't. And as I'm used to using a script and not speaking from my own life, I need a frame of reference. But yeah, so the life of performer is mostly some feast, but mostly famine. I didn't really feel like I had an academic home to really explore my skills, to nurture my talent. I had, so I just felt like I was languishing. And I was listening to a podcast the other day, because I like to listen to podcasts. It's a nice substitute for company. And this one was on NPR, and they had an analogy for languishing. It is to imagine yourself on a flight, and you're going somewhere, and you're almost there, but suddenly you can't land, and you spend hours, days, and months just circling. And if you start to feel like you're never gonna get to where you want to be, and you can't go back to where you started, so you just feel stuck. Loss of control. Welcome to my present day, ladies and gentlemen. So potential is a word that I've heard all of my life. I used to think it was this magic word, like something that was uttered with a wand, like waved, and it ensured me of having a life of accomplishment, of success. Now I hear it, and it tells me that I'm still not enough. And I've probably missed the boat to enough. I think it left maybe a decade ago. Oops. Like, maybe that might be a mental health thing. Who knows? Anyway, but what I also learned from this Hidden Braid episode is that it is not the absence of stress that keeps us from languishing, but social connection in the face of that stress. So, I have social connection at least 2 weeks of the year. I am a misfit in all regards. I was a misfit at school. I'm a misfit in my personal life. But here, I'm just kind of weird like everyone else. So much to the point of I can't really go out into my neighborhood and feel safe. Like, I got bitten by a dog the other day. A dog, yeah. Like, just, like, not far. It was on, like, 13th near Walnut, so, like, literally right around the corner. And the people who owned the dog didn't act like nothing happened. And it happened. It's there. See? Yeah. But as soon as I got back to the theater, I received care and concern in a way that made me feel human. And like this was a thing that mattered. And I am endlessly grateful for it. And it also, like last year, I was homeless around this time. And I got a place to crash from a friend. So I don't know what the future holds. But I am truly grateful to have a family annually. So, thank you, Fringe Festival. Looking forward to next year.
Keep it going for Aiden. Thank you so much, Aiden. I just hate to think how many people out there have a story similar to that, and they don't get to share it, and people don't know. Thank you for sharing yours. Before we can go on with our third storyteller tonight, I want to tell you about this guy back here. He plays all around town, busks all over the place, has played all around the world, sponsors open mic nights, plays for True Theater for show after show after show. He, during the pandemic, he started the Cincinnati Hip Hop Orchestra. He teaches at Wyoming, boy, I was going to read it, and then I thought I could do this. I've said it enough. And the Wyoming Center for the Performing Arts, yeah, right? Sorry. The Wyoming Center for the Performing Arts, teaching lessons. And when he's not doing that, or he's not working for his father at the Preston Charles Funeral Home, or he's not taking care of his 3 kids, he's probably playing live online. So if you follow him on Facebook, you'll get to enjoy that, because he's always going live when he's playing out. He also has 2 documentaries that, thanks to the generosity of the grants from ArtsWave, that you can check out by searching for Preston Bell Charles III on YouTube. And we're just so grateful to have him at all of our shows. And if you come to our main stage shows, he plays a lot more than we're giving him a chance to tonight. Ladies and gentlemen, Preston Bell Charles III. All right, our third storyteller tonight is a native of Los Angeles and is a creative across multiple genres. She's created children's shows featuring folk tales with female protagonists, as well as homages to the schlock and horror movies she loves. But at this festival, she brought us something much more dramatic, her one-woman show, which has allowed her to tour globally, gathering 12 international awards, a wealth of 5-star reviews, and was just declared a nominee for the 2024-25 International Fringe Encore Series to be considered for a performance at the Soho Playhouse in New York City. Woo! I hope you got a chance to see it, because it closed just a little while ago in this very space. Please welcome the creator and star of Eleanor's Story, An American Girl in Hitler's Germany, Ingrid Garner.
10 years ago, I'm in a PVC circus tent. It's 106 degrees inside, and 2 blocks away is the largest car race in Australia. These are the conditions under which I premiered my show, Eleanor's Story, An American Girl in Hitler's Germany, at a Fringe festival. Now, I know what you're thinking. Maybe that's not the best venue for a World War II drama. Although the reviewers did note that the droning of the cars and the flyover jets sort of added to the experience, blending in with the bombings and artillery barrages. But to me, this was sort of inevitable. Eleanor's Story is a world-renowned, award-winning memoir from my father's side of the family, my father's mother, Eleanor, my grandmother. But what you don't know is I have a famous relative on my mother's side, too, P.T. Barnum. Yeah, as in Barnum and Bailey's Circus. So this venue wasn't an unfortunate, foolish beginner's mistake. This was just family tradition. So circus has always been a part of my life, and it started with my mother, Christina Barnum. She lived up to the family name by going to mime school in the 1970s, and she used to be paid by the Wisconsin Arts Board to develop and tour clown shows. And even in her early career, she managed to bring circus into all of her normal jobs as well. She taught sex education using juggling. Listen, kids, when those hormones kick in, some days you feel up and some days you feel down. But I remember her touring to after-school library programs and Renaissance fairs with her one-woman circus show. And my favorite part of the show was, sitting in the audience, and she would be on a rollabola. A rollabola is a does anyone know what these are? It's a wooden plank on top of a cylinder, and you balance on top of it. So imagine her balancing on the rollabola. And she'd also be juggling. She'd be juggling an apple and an onion and a knife. And with every pass, she would take a bite out of the apple, and it was super impressive. And then, of course, on one toss, she would accidentally bite into the onion, and I loved hearing all the kids scream, "Ah!" But then she would use that humiliation to fuel a fantastic final trick, catching the apple on the knife, and everyone cheered. To this day, the smell of kerosene reminds me of Mother juggling her flaming torches on our front lawn on Halloween to attract trick-or-treaters, or maybe scare them away. And also, she became the head of the foreign language department at my high school. Sí, mi madre es una maestra de español. And and together we started the circus club at my high school. How humiliating. I was the president and then vice president. And we taught kids juggling and rollabola and stilts and unicycle and devil sticks and all sorts of circus arts. But if anything interested me about the circus, it was the animals. I loved animals. And no one else in my family shared this affection. I was not allowed to have any pets. But when I got to high school, I was delighted to find out that they had a Future Farmers of America program. And I threw myself into animal husbandry. I loved that in the middle of my humdrum day, I got to go off campus and wash a pig or shear a sheep, which I was great at. And for 3 years, I studied animal husbandry. I raised 3 lambs, Alice and Monty and Kenneth. And every year, I had to take them to the county fair. I had to show them at the county fair. And the county fair really rattled my circus DNA. Because, you know, there's carnival rides and carnival barkers and hypnotists and the smell of popcorn and the livestock. But my favorite thing was getting up early and going in to walk my lamb. And I got to see the sideshow animals being walked in the morning. And there was the tiniest horse on earth and the longest alligator and the biggest cow. It was advertised as 10,000 burgers worth of steer. And it was very intimidating. I'd be walking my lamb and I'd feel really intimidated by this, my poor little lamb. But even so, I won best in weight class. I was very good at showing my sheep. Looks like this. And I almost won Grand Lamb Champion. And I would have won it if I had remembered to zip up my uniform. It is a showmanship competition after all. But I loved this, and I really saw a future for myself in sheep farming. I had a fantasy that I would own a wool sheep, an organic wool sheep farm. And it would be in Northern California. And I even bought a spinning wheel, and I learned how to spin wool into yarn. And I really thought, this really completes the fantasy, and this is what I'm going to do with my life. But when it came time to apply to universities, my grades reflected more of an actor. This was fitting, though, because obviously performance is in my blood, right? In kindergarten, I was awarded most dramatic. And in elementary school, I enjoyed my turn as tree number 1 in The Wizard of Oz. And even though I wet myself on stage, I still won Best Actor. But it was really in high school that I came to have a drastic change in my life. It really had a deep effect on me. I struggled a lot in school, as I'm sure many performers did. I had ADHD, and I came to have an opinion of myself that I was stupid and incompetent, and I really believed that about myself until I threw myself into my first production, and I found something that I excelled in, and it improved every aspect of my life. Finding that confidence, I was less private, I was more outgoing, I was happier. And I think this really speaks to the value of arts for children. So instead of going into sheep farming, I enrolled myself in a BFA acting program at Cal State Fullerton in my hometown, which is where all the Disney princesses go, because it's Southern California. And I thrived. The professors really appreciated my unique take on characters, and I really thought that this was going to be it. But 2 years in, I was becoming concerned, as many of my young peers do get, about the uncertain reality of the entertainment industry, and what if I can't find a place in it? I really didn't see myself going up to Hollywood and going on an endless string of rejections and auditions, going for movies and television shows. And I also couldn't see myself moving to New York, Broadway bound. And I thought that meant I couldn't be an actor until I discovered Fringe festivals. I love these alternative punk rock, alternative theater festivals that stretch the boundaries of what theater can be. And I was sick of performing in the same old shows by the same old white men, no offense. And I loved sitting in the audience of these personal works, these beautiful, low-budget spectacles. And in it I saw a new future for myself. I knew that's what I wanted to do. So I dropped out of my acting program, and I spent my last semester developing Eleanor's story to tour the Fringe circuit. And a year later, I'm in a PVC circus tent in 106-degree heat, 2 blocks away from the Clipsal 500. And this is where I ended up. And it was wonderful. The Adelaide Fringe is the second largest theater festival on earth. There's 1,500 productions. How many are here? 40? 36? Yeah. 1,500 I was competing with. And there's hundreds of venues, and it's mostly outdoors. The 2 big venue hubs are these incredible, visionary, like pieces of eye candy, mostly circus. And the big ones are the Garden of Unearthly Delights and Gluttony, where I was. And they're just these incredible, like, acid trip playgrounds. There are drunk Aussies swinging from colorful scaffolding. There's beautiful ornate lanterns hanging between the eucalyptus trees with little Australian possums, which are way cuter than our possums, scurrying across them. And the night sky is filled with circus tents and carnival rides for as far as the eye can see. But not just any circus tents. These are Spiegel tents. Does anyone know Spiegel tents? Yeah, they're gorgeous. They're about 100 years old. They are Art Deco. They are made of ornate wood carvings and mirrors, and they're just stunningly beautiful, and they really add to the essence of it. The sounds are a cacophony of competing music shows, you know, with their music playing and this one's playing electronic music, and they clash together, and there's carnival barkers outside of caravans, you know, pitching their sideshows, and it really rattled my circus DNA. So I realized, standing in that PVC circus tent in 106-degree heat, that this was not a foolish mistake. This was my destiny. And I forgot to mention that there's one weekend, every Adelaide Fringe Festival, where a plague of car racing fanatics come and descend on the town and terrorize the poor artists for a whole weekend. And that was the weekend I decided to present my show. But you know, for the last 10 years, this really has been my destiny, I feel like. I am a one-woman circus, just like P.T. Barnum and just like my mother. I fit my whole life into a trunk, and I've made the road my home, and the circus my family. All my friends are clowns. Some are in the audience tonight. And I really feel like this has been a tremendous life I've created for myself. And I love it. And I love that in a circus, no place you ever go to is really a stranger, because it is filled with familiar faces, your fellow performers, my friends. And you know, when I'm standing here, just having finished my show at the Cincinnati Fringe in the No Theater, it's at moments like this I think, thank God I was too stupid to be a sheep farmer. Thank you.
Very good, yeah. As I mentioned, and as she mentioned, her last performance was just earlier this evening, but you should know that she's produced a sequel called Eleanor's Story, Life After War, and I'm sure I'm not the only one with fingers crossed that you're going to be bringing it here someday in the not too distant Fringe future. Thank you, Ingrid. All right, last but not least, our final storyteller tonight sent me his bio information just a little earlier today. He's a multi-hyphenate theater maker and writer. He has staged around 10 shows since 2018. For those of you who don't want to do the math, that's more than one a year. And he's toured 4 of them around the North American Fringe circuit. He's earned a Best LGBTQ Writer Splash Award from Watermark Magazine, and BroadwayWorld.com gave him the moniker of Best Solo Performance for the off-Broadway run of his show Spooky and Gay. He's from Orlando, Florida, where he enjoys making ice cream and his pet chihuahua with what has to be the best name for a dog ever, Lentil Ziti. He's probably best known as a solo performer, but is at the Cincy Fringe with Amika Hunter this year, producing the hilarious one-man show by two. C-Man, please give it up for Bruce Ryan Costella.
He just got it today because I just sent it today. As previously stated, I'm from Orlando, Florida. And growing up in Orlando, Halloween was always different. Different means very, very hot. Because like fall in movies, right, that like we're fed in media is all like, fall festivals and like crunching leaves and candy apples. Fall in Florida is t-shirts and like the hottest evenings you can possibly imagine. Like it should fully be illegal. So Halloween by extension is like a lot of like, synthetic fibers and like pooling sweat, these like pathetic drooping latex masks. And you better make sure that you're doing your trick-or-treating after sundown because boy, you'll be sweaty. But, in spite of that, I always had an affinity for Halloween. I loved Halloween. For example, one year, dressing up was always my favorite thing. So one year I went as Pikachu. Pikachu. So I wore this like fleece pajama costume and like yellow grease paint all over my face. And so by the end of trick-or-treating, I wound up looking like an abstract painting of Pikachu. Another year when I was a little bit younger, I insisted on going as Dracula. And so I had this like swooshy cape, and I loved it. Like, in part it was because like I was a tiny homosexual. In part because I liked that I could like generate my own gusts of air, and it just felt really good and liberating. And I think that is like kind of the germ of it, right? I think that's why so many queer people out there will tell you that they loved Halloween when they were young, because there is so much freedom of expression that can be had in like taking on a costume or another identity. And so, I don't know. I just, from an early age, I said, Halloween, that's for me. That's my holiday. Sorry, Arbor Day. Another thing about growing up in Central Florida and celebrating Halloween is what's surprising to a lot of people is that we have a deep love of Halloween events, namely like haunted attractions and haunted mazes. So part of this is organic. See, in Orlando, our main drivers of our economy are going to be the theme parks, right? And fall is historically the slowest time of year, so they get desperate and they're like, what are we going to do? What are we going to do? So Universal Florida decides in 1991 to start a Halloween event by the name of Halloween Horror Nights. So the premise there being they're going to build a bunch of like walk-through attractions out of plywood where people jump out at you and scare you. They populate mundane areas of the park with like chainsaw-wielding maniacs and clowns, and all of this is covered in a obscuring layer of synthetic fog. Yeah, so it's considered the best of its kind, this event. It's actually gone on every year since 1991 to this day. And from the moment I hear about it, I'm kind of hooked, right? Because like my sisters, they're in high school at this point, and so I'm like, well, tell me more about that. But then also there are these insane ads that air on local television. Like, and I remember them, they're like burnt into my brain. There's a specific one that I can harken back to. It's like 1997, and it's just this like flashing lightning. This person, can I get some lightning noise? Just like that. It's eerie. There's this person like trying to fall asleep, and then you hear this like viper voice narrator that's like, Halloween Horror Night 7, you'll never sleep again. And then from nowhere comes this like green tiny demon that lands on this person's eye, and then about the size of like a cockroach or whatever, and then it takes a chomp out of this person's eyelid. Like some cherub that's just like, I gotta get me some of that eye beef jerky. Like, what? And this aired during the daytime. This is like 2 p.m. Like, no. So of course I'm like, well, I gotta learn more about this. And so I hang over my sisters every words as they talk about their trips. Like I'm endlessly fascinated at this. Because it sounds almost like profane, right? This idea of like spending money to get scared. And then, of course, there's people that are scaring, right? So, like, they're getting paid. Like, what? It triggers something in me that's very compelling and sticks with me for years to come. So as a kid, I like performing a lot as well, in addition to all this. I do a lot of stage performance, like youth theater stuff. I have aspirations, like so many young performers, of eventually going on to do like Broadway musicals and the like. And in high school, I traveled with a performance troupe to New York City to attend the Tony Awards. I didn't win, or was nominated. But once I hit age 13, I'm old enough to attend horror nights because they suggest you be about 13 before you go. And I have the time of my life. I get the wit scared out of me. I'm like overwhelmed by the lights and the costumes and the design. It's just a feast for the eyes. And I become hooked on haunted events from this day forward. So I join fan forums like any self-respecting nerd at the time. I find groups of people who also love these kinds of events. I eventually start a podcast with some of my friends about the haunt industry. And, you know, I gotta preface this with, like, you know, in 2024, starting a podcast, not a big deal. In 2008, if you had a podcast, you really wanted to have a podcast, okay? That's how dyed in the wool I was. And so time passes, and eventually I become of age, 18, and I can audition for the event. And I'm cast. I am given the role of the ghost of a mental institution patient. Sure, that's like 6 degrees removed, right? Who has, in an effort to escape from the institution, jumps through a window and bleeds out with a bunch of shards of glass. So I have these like prosthetic glass bits sticking out of me and my arms. I'm like, yeah, I can work with this. This is scary. And then so because we're all the ghosts of these inmates and staff and other members of this institution, they render us all in grayscale to give us like an eerie effect, which I find to be a very artistic move on their part. So we do all this, we get primed, and I get to meet the people that I'm going to share the next 2 months with, my cast of fellow spooky people, scaracters, as they're known as. It's a portmanteau of scare and actor. There's just as many letters of the... Anyway. So I quickly become friends with them all, you know, because the way that Universal structures it is a set is 45 minutes on. So basically you do the same thing for 45 minutes, and then once that 45 minutes hits, someone else swaps out. A group of doppelgangers descend, and they do 45 minutes, so you can have a 45-minute break. It's a very organic system. In the 30-second turnover, I become friends with my tag-out, a slender gay gentleman who moonlights as a character to pay for his career as a seamstress and as a drag queen. Yes. Yes, and it's here that I realized that, of course, like, this is going to attract all kinds of different people, right? And through getting to know my cast, I realized just how different their lives are. For example, there's Beck. Beck is someone I'm still friends with today. She is a woman in middle age, and she works as the front desk lady at a charter school for STEM. She gives her inmate character pigtails to sort of infantilize her appearance a little bit. There's Ken. Ken is like this wolf-haired like grandfather type in his 60s. He's a retired public defender. And in this context, his character has soiled himself. So, you know, everybody poops. I read the book. It's okay. There's Ashley. Ashley is plays this doctor who's got like a crooked bone saw, and she's just kind of like a know-it-all, like sort of bitchy type. And then, but I come to realize through her that she actually lives with cystic fibrosis, and essentially only has one working lung and a significantly shortened lifespan. And then there's Sarah. Sarah is the very kindly epileptic who plays a nurse that's had a pair of scissors gouged into her eyes, and there's like gore surrounding them. She informs me that unlike usual epileptics that smell burnt toast when they're about to have a seizure, she smells those little mini blueberry muffins that Entenmann's makes. We're instructed to not bring them in just in case so we don't confuse her. Yeah. And so it becomes this weird little like monoculture, this community that we form, and we share stories about the scares that we've just gotten. We do potlucks, which is very funny. If you ever see someone in full horror regalia just like eating spinach dip, I highly recommend it. We always keep tabs on the things that the park guests do. So, for example, we count how many shoes we scare off of people. If we can drop someone to the floor. If someone pees themselves, that's a huge win. You get a raise. No, I don't know. I'm taught tricks and different techniques as I do the event over the years. So, for example, one of them I like to call the spooky step. So it's basically, especially this is useful when you're just wandering around, right? So you just kind of like futz along, and you, and the idea is that you're supposed to look like you're not doing anything, but really you're doing everything. Then chainsaw technique. Oh my God, that's how we separate the wheat from the chaff, you know? Because amateur hour, someone who doesn't know how to properly use a chainsaw, they're gonna do like Texas chainsaw, wagging around, you know, idiot stuff. The real professionals know that the weight of the saw combined with gravity, if you turn that thing off and just sling it down, it'll make a perfect little surprise buzz that'll get anyone. If you do this stuff, this like Shakira stuff, you're gonna develop a very specific form of tennis elbow that seasoned characters refer to as chainsaw claw. This is real. Because you're basically your hand, you're so used to pulling weird that like your hand gets caught in this position. It's I'm introduced to this world that I had never been privy to, and it was so empowering and wonderful to see the diversity of backgrounds that these people came from. So come my early 20s, I start attending school for theater, for live performance, and my priorities have shifted somewhat. I've lost interest in ever doing musicals as a lifelong commitment because I recognize the sort of narrow forms of expression that the Broadway musical props up as ideal. I come to find that I really enjoy doing plays, you know, and Shakespeare, serious theater, like Seaman, you guys saw it. But you know, I get tired of playing these like stupid bit characters and like, you know, character parts, and it just becomes exhausting. I don't feel valued and seen, and so I find a community in local artists that are making their own work. I start writing my own plays. I start staging original work. In total, I did 10 years of Halloween Horror Nights as a scary person. Yes. When you break it down, it's maybe less impressive. So 5 of those were full-time, but that's only working like 2 months at a time, roughly. And then the other 5 were working as a sort of like substitute scarer. If someone called out as sick or someone, you know, quits their role, they have to have someone to put in that position. And so if I'm willing to work, I just show up and they slot me wherever. Over the years, I got to do a lot of different things. I got to, for example, I was an undead trick-or-treater with like a vintage owl mask and a cowbell, because sure. I was an angry yuppie with a golf club. I was a chainsaw-wielding car mechanic. I was I mean, if you could name it, basically I've done it, essentially. And it always felt like anytime they put me somewhere, I could make it my own. It didn't matter, you know, what I looked like. Because honestly, guys, I don't think I'm very scary looking. I'm gonna say it. Like maybe I'm scary in the way that Steve Buscemi is scary. Right? Like at worst, I'm gonna be kind of a creep. But like if you had to push me over, I'm gonna go down. But not scary, right? I don't know. It was in as strange a place as this that I start to feel empowered and bigger than I was as a person. In my 5th year, I actually got to play perhaps one of my strangest roles. This was a full-time position. I was a steampunk version of Pinocchio. So I had like glowing like monocle and like wood lycra print skin, and like also he was supposed to be drunk. Not my choice, I don't know, it was a weird time. On paper, this was the least scary I should have ever felt. Yet this year in particular, for whatever reason, I was a terror. You could not stop me. I have so few pictures of that time because I was unphotographable, basically. I was a ping pong. And again, I felt that sort of internal engine, that power. And I think other people felt that too, because that was the year that park-wide I was named the best character at all of Halloween Horror Nights. Yeah. So I was nominated by my peers, voted on by my peers, and I wound up getting this giant 3-foot-tall trophy topped with a lucite pumpkin, so you know it means business. It currently sits in my bathroom because I have nowhere else to put it. And so every time I use the toilet, I'm like, yeah, I did a good job. Nice. But it really was a moment for me. Like, it really it felt full circle that I went from, being this kid that didn't understand what this could even be to feeling like I'd done something that made me bigger than myself. But I also dealt with shame. A lot of my more established theater compatriots, my performing artists, they would always speak ill of scare acting, which is silly to say, but it's true that I think a lot of creatives will, when they're feeling insecure, punch down at certain art forms, see them as lesser than. And this is no different, that there was no craft to it, that people do this because they can't do anything else. And yet I'd seen performers frighten people, compel people to produce emotion in a way that I'd never seen stage performers do. Work harder, be at it longer than any stage performer I'd ever known. And also the level of diversity on display, mind-boggling. Theaters did not look like these haunts looked, okay? There were diversity of bodies, of disability, of ages, of accents, ethnicities, gender expression. I saw all of that on display in this space, and the theater has still not caught up to that. It felt more democratized. It felt like through terror, people could find power, expression, right? So at age 30, I decided I would retire. I got cast late in the run. Someone had, quit or whatever, and they decided to slot me in for the last couple weeks in this position. And I'd always said to myself that, this would be my 10th year, and that 10 was a good number to end on. 10 just felt solid and sane, and more than that was somehow the tipping point. I don't know. But so my last set as a character, I alternated scaring and weeping for 45 minutes straight. It was through those happy tears that I couldn't help but reflect on all the things that I'd done and accomplished, I had learned how to make myself bigger and smaller, how to immediately meet someone and make them laugh or uncomfortable if I needed to get rid of them. It really taught me what it was to be in the world in a way that felt good. And yeah, it was hot and it was disgusting outside because it's Florida in October. But that night, I felt on the other side of a decade like I was more cunning, I was more kind, and yes, I am very scary.
Keep it going for Bruce! There's one more showing of Seaman tomorrow night, 7 o'clock over at the Art Academy. There's one more showing of Bloody Mary. You can see Aiden in 8:45 tomorrow night at Gabriel's Corner. And give it up one more time for all of our storytellers tonight. Kirk and Aiden and Ingrid and Bruce, Preston Belt, Charles III, John Caudill, Morgan on Lights and Sound, everybody at the festival, everybody behind the scenes at True Theater. Folks, we always say that it takes two people to tell a story, one to tell it and another to open up their hearts and listen. And tonight you did just that, and we thank you for it. Whether we see you next year back here for True Fringe 2025, next month at Memorial Hall for True Scam, or even next week for our open mic pitch night, until next we see you, be true.